All right, so we've just left
Hinkley finally after 2 weeks.
Yeah, of sitting in the glorious sunlight on, like, basically we didn't have to run our engine for the whole 2 weeks we were there. We just lived off of solar.
And it wasn't sunny like this the whole time either. So.
No. But there was enough sunlight. The panels just kicked in and did it for us. And they weren't even tilted, which is just delightful.
It is delightful, but then why the hell did you build those amazing brackets?
Because when we need them, we need them. So we moved up here to Trinity Marina.
And they very kindly let us fill up with water. So we've just pulled into the marina. And we used the Elsan as well.
And they very kindly charged us £2 for that.
Yeah. Did they?
Yeah.
It's only £2.
It's only £2. It's a pretty good deal, actually.
Yeah. Shame we didn't have more urine to get rid of.
Yeah. More would make it seem more efficient. The water pipe was frozen solid, so we at first thought we'd be sitting here for about 2 months, but luckily the ice came out of it. And
so yeah, we're just at the moment at the beginning of the supposed big freeze. So it's been mild up until last night when the canal froze over, and it's forecast that way for a week. So we could well get stuck on the Ashby. So we decided to move today, fill up with water today, and we'd had our 2 weeks at Hinkley, so we should definitely.
Yeah.
Be moving on.
We did a big grocery shop this morning, came up here, putting in water, which is how we begin almost every video it seems these days, clearing out the wee, and then getting back out, doing another crazy maneuver to get out onto the canal.
In the wind.
Heading up towards...
Stoke Golding, I think.
Yeah, probably Stoke Golding or Bosworth Battlefield.
I think we could possibly push on to Bosworth, but depends how cold we get.
Yeah. And there's garbage cans, apparently, at Stoke Golding.
Oh my gosh, we
have a full bow.
I'm sure we've been carrying garbage since Coventry.
Yeah. We've got to get rid of that.
Yeah.
So yeah. Look at that poor dog in the window. How much is that doggy in the window?
Georgie! Come out your windows now. It's freezing.
It's windy.
We've got to Bridge 23.
There's a farm shop.
And that's why we've stopped here.
Yeah. There's little horsies back over here. Ball throwers come out to bribe the dog. And
I think that's the shop. It's open.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Let's go see. I bought potatoes and some bread and mushrooms and some farm fresh eggs.
And no meat.
No meat. Lovely meat in there. If you eat meat, good bless you.
So how was your cruise today?
Nice. Cold. A little bit tricky. There was some driving issues.
Only two.
Three.
Three?
Yeah.
3 driving issues.
Yeah. There was the shooting past my desired exit point from the marina, which then resulted in me having to back out of the marina, which was a little bit weird.
Michael joked about leaving the marina sideways, but we were actually in a position where we were trying to leave the position.
Sideways. We're sort of stuck across the exit. Yeah, and then we stopped at the farm shop at Bridge 23, which is a really nice little shop.
Really
Got
nice
out
lady.
and tried to push off and nearly ran into the boat in front of us
Yeah,
because of the wind.
we were moored in front of a boat, and so you push out and then you can go forward. but as you pushed out and went forward, you then got blown back in towards that boat. So we had to put on the emergency brakes and
pull backwards, push forward at the same time. It was.
And the second time it nearly happened again, but you just had to
power out.
Yeah.
And then we got into a section from bridge 30 to 32.
Yeah, we met a boat coming the other way and they warned us that it was shallow between 30 and 32 and to stick to the centre and to go fast.
Yeah.
But then we met a boat coming the other way in that section, so we couldn't stick to the centre.
No, and I had to pull off to the right to get out of their way, and then we actually hit the silt on the bottom of the canal, and the boat started to bank as we came through there. And I'm like, no matter how fast you're going in a narrowboat, you shouldn't be banking. So
But,
I'm glad I was the only one on the boat at the time.
Yeah, me and George were walking, and now we found the holy grail of moorings. It's only 24 hour, but I don't think that applies because it's winter mooring rules, so we probably could stay here longer, but it's such a nice mooring. I don't know if we should, because we should share it, but it's the one by the Heritage Trail for the Battle of Bosworth, and I think it's called Sutton Wharf, and there's a cafe that we're going to go and visit. There's a water tap, there is refuse
and Elsan with recycling. It's basically the Trinity.
Yeah. We stopped at Ashby Boats, and because on the Nicholson's guide it said that was a
refuse point.
But I got there and I asked the man, because I was walking at this time, and he was like, no, it's not, the next one's here. And he said that he was getting in his van to come here so we could give him our rubbish. So we had these 2 massive sacks of rubbish, and he took them up for us.
Which led to the other fun point because of driving, because I had to reverse backwards through a bridge, try not to hit the bridge, try not to knock the coal off the boat with the bridge. Then there was a great big piece of wood underneath the bridge that was jutting out, which was lovely and helpfully pointed at.
But what a nice man, but now it'll be just embarrassing if we see him and he's like, oh, you could have taken it yourself. But yeah, now we're going to go to the cafe.
Cafe will be nice.
Yeah.
You're not going to help, you're going to film now. Oh, very sick. Okay, so now we're standing on Ambion Hill, the site where there's a memorial up there to the battle that didn't happen here and the people who didn't die here. Traditionally, the story of the Battle of Bosworth Field was set here at Ambion Hill, and that was because there were these medieval chronicles, and there were sort of 4 of them that talked about the battle. And the battle is what ended the War of the Roses and ended the Middle Ages, and so from our perspective it was a pretty big deal. But I guess from the perspective of the time and the historians who were there, it was like kind of a minor event in which a sort of guy who the victors described as an usurper was killed, and nobody liked him anyway, so it was sort of forgotten. The actual battle happened way down there, a couple of kilometers away. This Ambion Hill was pretty much where Richard III spent the night before he died. It's like this fight between these 2 of 3 remaining kind of splinter groups of, the legitimate king, and each of them has family members who have a claim to the throne, and ultimately due to all kinds of battles and tragedy and people pooping themselves to death and all sorts of stuff, you end up in a situation in which there's this long-standing 30-year war between these 2 families, the Yorks and the Lancasters. The York family essentially won the War of the Roses at the Battle of Talbot, I think it was called, or something like that, where Edward VI gets crowned. But then Edward spends the next years of his life, it was 15 years after that battle, trying to solidify control over the country and everything. And ultimately, when he dies, he leaves his 2 sons, who are too young to be on the throne. So Richard III became Richard III when he imprisoned his older brothers, firstborn and secondborn sons, in the Tower of London, after getting the marriage that Edward VI had that led to their birth declared illegal, and so turning them into illegitimate children. Richard takes the throne. Richard is very unpopular and basically pisses off a whole bunch of people. But there isn't anybody left on the Lancastrian side who's got a real claim to the throne, except for this guy, Henry Tudor. Henry Tudor gets to invade by getting onto a boat and coming over to Wales, where he lands unopposed. He takes this castle, nobody stops him. Him and this very sort of popular Welsh guy get together, join up, bring their army into sort of the Midlands, and get over towards this place here, Bosworth. Richard gets his company of people together, and he brings an army that's composed of Richard and his battle, what they call a battle, like a group of soldiers and knights and stuff. The Duke of Norfolk, I think it was Duke. Anyway, Norfolk, who is going to be controlling the second part of his army, and Northumberland, who's going to be controlling the third part of his army. So he's got an army that's split into 3 different pieces. And Tudor is coming up, and he's got an army that's composed mainly of sort of French mercenaries and some Welshmen who were seen as upstarts and stuff, and a bunch of people who were like unfriendly with the Yorks and stuff, and who'd been wronged by Richard. And they all show up here, and Ambion Hill is where Richard puts his guys for the night, and down over that way is Henry and his group, led by a guy named Oxford, and his army's like a third the size. Like, it's quite a bit smaller. So Richard's sitting up here having a fairly good chance of winning, but there's this second group, or third group really, like this other force, led by Lord Stanley and his son. I think it's his son. Anyway, the Stanleys have another army sitting over that way in Deddington, and they're visible from here. And before the battle begins, Richard sends somebody over and says, "I've got your son, oddly enough named Lord Strange, and I'm going to kill him if you don't declare allegiance for me." And Stanley reports back and says, "I've got other sons." So you've got this big army, it's sitting up here, it thinks it's going to win. Henry Tudor has sent somebody over to the Stanleys and said, "Can you come join us? Will you declare for me?" And the Stanleys are like, we'll naturally see what happens. Henry Tudor and his guys start trying to attack Norfolk's guys. Norfolk goes down, gets into a fight in a marshland down there with Henry Tudor's group, and Oxford starts to win, because Oxford's also, a pretty good general. Henry doesn't know a thing about warfare. So he's kind of hanging out in the back with his bodyguard while Oxford's fighting this battle, and Oxford ultimately starts beating Norfolk. Norfolk's guys start running. Richard gets it into his heart to solve this whole problem by making one massive charge straight at Henry with all of his knights. Charges down the hill into the middle of the battle, smashes into Henry Tudor's army, and apparently gets within sword's length of Henry. But as he's doing this, the Stanleys up on their hill see that Richard's divided his forces. So Stanley charges in and goes after Richard. And apparently some unknown Welshman who put a piece of steel through the head of Richard III. Nobody knows who that guy is. Nobody knows where he died. But that dude, ended the Plantagenet kings. And an hour later, down that way near Ditterington, on a place called King's Hill, I think it is, or Kinging Hill or something, they put Richard's circlet, like the sort of crown, on top of Henry's head, and created the beginning of the Tudor dynasty leading to Henry VIII.
So this is Shenton Station on the battlefield line, and in the spring and summer there's steam trains that run along here, but they don't start till the 18th of March.
It'd be kind of nice to see it.
It would be really nice. Michael's never been on a steam train, have you?
I've never seen an operating steam train. I've seen steam trains, but they've all been in like museums and stuff.
Well, if the Ashby freeze is over, we might still be here in a month, so.
Yeah. George is looking disturbingly like a pointer because George had to have a trim. George has been trimmed. George is now aerodynamic. He's svelte. He's missing all of his feathers and furs.
I was worried I'd stop loving him because I'm said if Michael ever gets his beard, God, I look awful. Why didn't you tell me I was in that whole video? I've always said to Mike...
I've always said if she loses her looks, we're done.
Uh-oh. If Michael shaves his beard, then I want a divorce. And then George shaved all of his.
Yeah. And you were actually seriously worried you weren't going to like your dog when he came out of the place.
But I still love him.
Yeah.
It's generally the same dog.
He does look more like a pointer.
He gets just as muddy. Well, no, not quite as muddy. And he definitely brings in less blood.
Yeah.
And he sheds less hair.
Yeah.
You think he looks cooler?
Yeah.
I miss Shaggy George.
Well, I like the Shaggy George, but he was getting too shaggy.
He was very shaggy.
And he was getting some... It was getting to the point where he was starting to have mats and stuff. And,
Yeah.
he needed a shave. But we might have gone a little bit overboard.
So anyway, today we woke up in Sutton Wharf. But everyone was saying to us it's going to freeze tonight. And it's going to freeze for a week. And if it freezes, the Ashby really does freeze solid, especially the further in you get. And we're now...
We're about 6 miles from the end, I think.
Oh, yeah. Is that all?
Yeah.
So we decided to move on. But first you'll have seen the footage, we did the Battle of Bosworth. London.
The Battle of Bosworth.
Battle of Bosworth Trail.
Went to Albion Hill. Walked around up there.
And actually it's really nice, even if you're not interested in history, it's a really nice walk.
Then we walked back to the boat over at Sutton Wharf. Got on the boat and pottered off down the canal to just outside Market Bosworth.
Yeah, if it does freeze, this is an okay place to be because Market Bosworth's really nice and the shops. There's a water tap here and it's just quite civilised. And how was the cruise? Because me and George just stayed in the boat.
From the perspective of the stern person.
You are very stern.
I am stern. It was lovely. There was no locks, only a couple of sections that were a little shallow on the sides. Ultimately, the Ashby is really quite easy to cruise. Lots of lovely scenery, many ducks and things.
And it was like bitterly cold. Like even though it was sunshine,
it was definitely cold and getting colder.
Yeah. So tonight it's supposed to be -3, so it'll be interesting to see if we wake up to a frozen canal.
That's the end of this vlog, so, thank you very much for coming along with this, and probably spending a little bit of time listening to me prattling along, but heavily edited, about the Battle of Bosworth Field, Richard III, and the complexity of trusting people you shouldn't, named Stanley.
Can you do it in your big voice?
My big voice? What's my big voice?
Deeper, higher, louder.
Deeper, higher, louder.
Let's get the noisemaker off.
Oh, the noisemaker.
So we need to introduce George's haircut. Also, he should go against... What?
This is George's haircut. Sheep on the side of the road, stuff like that.
On the side of the road?
Yeah, side of the towpath. Also, if you ever need a hearse. I swear there's a business opportunity on opening on a funerary shop called My Kingdom for Hers. So, I don't know if anybody will invest.
No.
Okay. I can sort of zen out back here on
Is
the
that why we were
straightaways.
zigzagging a bit? Because we did like veer over here at one point, and I was like, "Is he okay?" And then we veered backwards, and I was like, "No, he's fine."
Like, click, whatever how do I say that?
Click.
Click, like, subscribe, enjoy.
There's a bell you're supposed to click, I think.
Is it belly you're supposed to click? Oh yeah, click the little belly doobly-doo thing. Yeah, George will be happy. And,
Yeah, just click for George.
Click for George. If you want to click for George. Just look at his face. Look at his face. This isn't the face. Get off, Dad. Oh, there he goes. I'm out of here. I'm out of here.